Your boot is up. A praying mantis clings to your tomato leaf, head swiveling, watching you like it knows something you don't. Every instinct says, crush it, don't. Lower your foot, slowly. That odd green creature is worth more to your garden than any spray you've ever carried home from a store. I mean that in real dollars. For 11 summers I squashed every one I found. I thought they were pests. I thought they chewed my leaves. I was wrong in a way that cost me hundreds of dollars and 2 ruined vegetable beds. One evening, late in July, the year my heirloom tomatoes got stripped down to bare green sticks, I stood in my own backyard holding an empty spray bottle, asking myself why nothing I bought ever worked. That single question changed everything for me. Stay with me, because before we're done, I'll show you a method written down in an American government bulletin more than 100 years ago. It's one simple thing you can do on a cold winter afternoon that turns a single find on a bare branch into hundreds of tiny garden guardians by spring. And this works in the yard you already have, the pots on the porch you already own, the little plot behind the house you've kept for years. Let me start with what those 11 years actually cost me, because the number still makes me wince. I kept every receipt for a while, back when I thought spending money meant I was solving a problem. Between the concentrate you mix in a tank, the ready-to-spray bottles, the granules you shake around the base of the plants, and the little yellow traps that never seem to catch the right thing, I was spending somewhere between $80 and $120 a season, every single year, for more than a decade. That's well over $1,000, and I'm rounding down to be kind to myself. And here's the part that still stings. It didn't even work. Every June I'd start clean. Fresh soil, healthy seedlings, that hopeful feeling every gardener knows. By late July, the aphids would show up in clusters so thick the stems looked furry. Then the caterpillars. Then the beetles chewing lace patterns into my leaves. So I'd spray. The bugs would drop for a few days. And then they'd come right back, worse than before, like they'd learned my schedule. I remember standing there thinking I just hadn't bought the strong enough version yet. That's the trap. That's exactly how I thought. I believed the solution was always one more purchase away. What I didn't understand was that every time I sprayed, I wasn't just killing the pests. I was killing the one thing that ate the pests for free. Because that praying mantis I kept crushing, that was my unpaid, around-the-clock pest patrol, and I was murdering my own workforce. Let me tell you what a praying mantis actually is, because almost nobody explains this part, and once you understand it, you'll never look at one the same way again. The praying mantis is not a plant eater. Not even a little bit. It has no interest in your tomatoes, your lettuce, your roses, or your beans. It is a pure predator. Every single thing it eats is another insect. It sits perfectly still, folds those front legs up like it's praying, and waits. When something moves within reach, those legs snap out in about 50 thousandths of a second. Faster than you can blink, faster than most prey can react. The name itself tells you how long people have respected this creature. The word mantis comes from ancient Greek, and it means prophet or seer. The Greeks watched this insect hold that still, upright, folded pose, and they thought it looked like something in prayer, something wise. They believed it could point the way home to a lost traveler. That's how far back this respect goes, thousands of years. And in 1758, the great naturalist Carl Linnaeus, the man who gave us the whole system for naming living things, gave the European mantis its formal name, Mantis religiosa. Religiosa, the religious one, the praying one. A scientist looked at this bug in the 1700s and thought its posture was worth naming after prayer itself. Now here's what those old observers understood that I didn't. That folded, praying pose is a hunting pose. It's patience. It's a killer waiting in plain sight. A single praying mantis will eat aphids, mosquitoes, flies, moths, crickets, grasshoppers, beetles, leafhoppers, and yes, the fat green caterpillars that were turning my tomato plants into skeletons. It eats the soft-bodied pests when it's young and small, and as it grows through the summer it takes on bigger and bigger prey. By late summer, a full-grown mantis can take down insects nearly its own size. Think about what that means. The exact time of year when my garden always collapsed, late July and August, when the pests were at their worst, is the exact time a mantis is at its hungriest and most powerful. I had the perfect solution living in my garden, and I was stepping on it. But it gets worse, because understanding one mantis isn't the real story. The real story is in the numbers, and the numbers are staggering. Let me tell you about the egg case, because this is where I went from feeling foolish to feeling genuinely robbed. A female praying mantis doesn't lay 1 or 2 eggs. In late autumn, before the cold takes her, she produces a frothy mass that hardens into a tough, tan, papery lump about the size of a large grape or a small walnut. Scientists call it an ootheca. Gardeners just call it an egg case. She fixes it to a twig, a fence rail, a stem, the underside of a windowsill, anywhere sturdy and a little sheltered. Inside that one little lump are eggs, not a handful. Depending on the species, one egg case holds anywhere from 100 to 200 eggs, and some hold as many as 400. Read that again. One egg case. Up to 400 baby mantises. They wait through the entire winter, frozen solid, perfectly fine. And then on a warm morning in spring they all pour out at once. Dozens and dozens of tiny, perfect, hungry hunters spreading across your garden. Now here's the moment that made me sick to my stomach. For years, when I did my winter cleanup, I would snip off the dead stems and clear the old growth, and I would find these strange tan lumps on the branches. I didn't know what they were. I thought they were some kind of gall, or a fungus, or an egg case of something bad. So I did what I did with everything I didn't understand. I threw them in the fire pit. I burned them. I sat there feeling productive, tidy, in control of my garden, while I incinerated 2, 3, sometimes 400 free pest predators at a time. In one afternoon of cleanup, I probably destroyed more natural pest control than all my spray bottles could ever provide, and then I turned around and paid money for the chemicals to replace what I'd just killed. That, right there, is the whole tragedy in one image. That's the moment I want to spare you from. And now I have to tell you why almost none of us learned this. Because it isn't an accident. And this is the part that got me a little angry once I saw it clearly. For most of human history, gardeners and farmers knew their beneficial insects. They had to. There was no bottle to buy. If you wanted your crops protected, you learned which creatures worked for you and which worked against you. This knowledge was passed down, parent to child, season to season, for countless generations. The praying mantis was known, welcomed, and protected. Then, in the middle of the 20th century, everything changed. After the Second World War, a flood of new synthetic chemical pesticides hit the home market. They were cheap to make, easy to sell, and they came with a powerful message. The message was that a good garden is a sterile garden, that every bug is your enemy, that the modern respectable way to grow food was to spray first and ask no questions. And it worked. As a sales pitch, it worked beautifully. Because a bottle you buy every single season is a far better business than a mantis that works for free and asks for nothing. Think about the arrangement from their side. If you learn that a praying mantis will patrol your garden for months at zero cost, how many bottles do you buy? None. But if you're taught to fear every insect equally, to see that mantis as just one more thing to illuminate, then you'll spray it, kill it, and come back next month to buy more. The forgetting was profitable. Our grandparents' common sense was quietly replaced with a shopping list. I'm not telling you there's some cartoon villain twirling a mustache. I'm telling you that a piece of ordinary, useful knowledge that every gardener once carried got buried under decades of marketing, until people like me were standing in the yard, boot raised, about to kill the best friend our garden ever had, and paying for the privilege. But once I understood the history, I understood how to undo it. And that's where this turns around for good. Let me show you how these mantises even ended up in American gardens, because the story has real dates and a real place, and it tells you exactly how valuable people used to think this insect was. The big green Chinese mantis you probably see in your garden, the largest one, up to about 4 inches long, is not originally from North America. It arrived by accident around 1896 in a town called Mount Airy, near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The story goes that egg cases hitched a ride on nursery plants shipped from Asia. Once people saw how ferociously these mantises hunted garden pests, nobody wanted to get rid of them. They wanted more. Nurseries and seed catalogs began selling praying mantis egg cases on purpose, as living pest control, decades before anyone had ever heard the phrase organic gardening. Gardeners would order these tan lumps through the mail, tie them onto their branches, and wait for spring. This was a normal, respected practice. And that mistake I made with those tan lumps in the fire pit was only one of a dozen things I got backwards around my own place, doing what looked like plain common sense. Every one of them was already answered in the old dated bulletins and extension records our grandparents lived by, and I sat down and wrote all of it out properly, as 3 books, because a video like this can only hold one creature and one season. In there you get the whole system, the real cases and the ready-made templates, laid out as 30 days of small moves that use what is already sitting in your garage right now: a scrap board, a brush pile, a bucket, an untouched corner. No spray, no zapper, no quarterly contract, no removal quote ever again. It also gives you the dated sources, so when your wife or your neighbor asks why you stopped spraying, you can show them in writing instead of arguing. If you want the full version of what I am handing you free today, scan the QR code right there on your screen. Link in the description. Pinned comment. Now, back to why you and I were never taught any of this, because it wasn't an accident. And the respect ran deep enough to become official. In 1977, the state of Connecticut named the praying mantis its official state insect. A whole state looked at every creature it could have chosen and picked the mantis, specifically praising it as a friend to farmers and gardeners. That designation is still on the books today. So, this isn't fringe. This isn't some crank theory from the internet. A state government put it in writing that this insect is a gardener's ally. At the very same time, the chemical aisle at the store was teaching the rest of us to fear anything with more than 4 legs. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now, because I thought it too. You're thinking, this is all fine for somebody planning a big garden from scratch, somebody with acres and time and a fresh start. But I've already got my garden. It's already planted. I've already been spraying for years. This ship has sailed for me. I promise you, it hasn't. This next part is built specifically for you, for the garden you already have, exactly as it sits right now, and you don't need to buy a single thing to begin. Here's the first move, and you can do it the moment you walk outside. Stop the broad spraying. Not because someone told you to feel guilty about chemicals, but for a plain, practical reason. Those sprays don't tell the difference between a pest and a predator. When you soak your plants, you're killing the aphids, sure, but you're also killing the mantis, the ladybug, the lacewing, every hunter that would have handled the aphids for you for free. You're firing your whole army to swat a few flies. When you stop, Within 1 or 2 seasons, the natural balance starts to return on its own, because those predators can finally survive long enough to do their job. Second move. Learn to recognize a mantis at every stage, so you never kill one by mistake again. In spring, you'll see tiny versions, maybe half an inch long, pale and delicate, moving in that same careful, deliberate way. Those are baby mantises, and each one is already hunting. Leave every single one. In summer, you'll see the bigger ones, green or brown, on your stems and flowers. Leave those too. They are not eating your plants. They are guarding them. Third move, and this one costs nothing. Give them a place to hunt and hide. Mantises love a garden with some structure, some height, some cover. If you have any tall flowering plants, ornamental grasses, shrubs, or even a few sturdy stems you'd normally cut down, leave some of them standing. A mantis needs somewhere to perch and wait in ambush. A yard scraped down to bare dirt gives them nothing. A yard with a few tall, leafy hiding spots becomes a hunting ground. And here's a fourth thing you can do this very afternoon with what's already growing. If you want to actively invite mantises and the other good hunters in, let a few plants flower and go a little wild. Dill, fennel, cosmos, marigolds, and tall daisy-like flowers all draw in the smaller insects that baby mantises feed on, and they give the adults cover to hide in. You're not planting a whole new garden. You're just letting one corner of the one you have grow a little less tidy on purpose. I did exactly this. I stopped spraying. I left a messy back corner. I learned what the babies looked like so I'd never crush another one. And within 2 seasons, I watched something I'll never forget. I found a mantis sitting motionless on a tomato stem, and right below it, where the caterpillars used to feast, there was nothing. Clean leaves. It had done in silence what my spray bottles never could. But leaving them alone and welcoming them is only half of it. The real secret, the one that took me 11 wasted years to find, is how to multiply them on purpose. And that brings me to the method I promised you at the start. This is the part I wish someone had told me 2 decades ago. It comes straight out of the era when nurseries sold these egg cases by mail, and it was written into the old gardening bulletins and catalog instructions from around the early 1900s, back when protecting mantis eggs over winter was considered basic garden knowledge, as ordinary as saving seeds. The introduction of the Chinese mantis around 1896 turned this into a real, documented practice, and the instructions that came with those mail-order egg cases spelled it out plainly. Then the chemical age came along, and the whole thing was forgotten. Here it is, brought back. In late fall and all through winter, when the leaves are down and the branches are bare, that is the single best time of year to find praying mantis egg cases. This is the part nobody realizes. Winter isn't the dead season for this. It's harvest season for the most valuable thing in your garden. With no leaves in the way, those tan, papery lumps stand out clearly on the twigs, on old flower stems, on fence lines, on the underside of railings, tucked into shrubs, anywhere sheltered from the hardest wind. So instead of doing what I did for years, instead of snipping every branch and burning everything, you do the opposite. You go looking. You walk your yard slowly and you hunt for those little lumps, and when you find one, you do not throw it away. You save it. Here's exactly how. If the egg case is on a branch you need to cut anyway, don't panic. Just cut the twig a few inches on either side of it so you keep the whole thing intact. Then find a spot in your garden where you want next year's pest patrol to begin. Tie or wedge that twig onto a plant, a shrub, or a fence, somewhere between about 1 foot and 4 feet off the ground. Not on the bare soil, because down there they get eaten by ants and mice and rot in the damp. Up off the ground, in a sheltered spot that gets some sun but not blistering all-day heat, is exactly what they need. Then you leave it alone all winter. Through the freezing, through the snow, through everything. Those eggs are built for it. They are supposed to freeze. And on a warm morning in spring, usually when the weather settles and things green up, that one little case you rescued will hatch out, and dozens upon dozens of tiny mantises will spill out across your garden, right where you placed them, ready to hunt from their very first day of life. One case you found for free, on a winter walk, in the garden you already own, can seed your entire yard with predators for the whole coming year. That is the trick the mail-order catalog sold for good money 100 years ago, and you can now do it for nothing, with a case you find on your own branches. And if you can't find one yourself the first year, you can still buy praying mantis egg cases today, cheaply, from garden suppliers, exactly the way gardeners did back in 1900. But once you learn to spot them, you won't need to buy them again. You'll find your own every winter, because a garden that shelters mantises makes more mantises, season after season, for free. Let me put a fine point on it so you never forget it. The old-timers didn't clear their winter branches blindly. They read them. Every tan lump was next summer's protection. They knew that one egg case was worth more than a whole shelf of powders, and they treated it that way, carefully cutting it, carefully placing it, patiently waiting. That knowledge didn't disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because it couldn't be sold in a bottle. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. I didn't need to spend $1,000 over 11 years. I didn't need a single spray. Everything I was desperate to buy was already living in my yard, breeding on my own branches, waiting for me to stop killing it and start protecting it. The answer was never at the store. The answer was the creature under my boot. So the next time you're standing in your garden and you see that strange, still, praying shape watching you with those swiveling eyes, I want you to remember what it really is. It's not a pest. It's not a threat. It's the oldest, cheapest, most patient garden helper there is. The one the Greeks called a prophet. The one Linnaeus named for prayer. The one a whole state chose to honor. It's a gift you almost stepped on. If you've ever felt talked into buying your way out of a problem that common sense could have solved for free, then you already know the kind of person you are. You're the kind who'd rather trust something proven than something advertised. You'd rather understand your own backyard than keep paying strangers to poison it. That's exactly who this is for. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever found one of those tan, papery egg cases on a branch and had no idea what it was? Did you save it, or did you toss it like I used to? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely want to know how many of us were burning our best helpers without a clue. And while you're there, tell me what part of the country or the world you're gardening from, because mantis species change from place to place, and I love seeing where everyone's watching from. If this brought back a piece of the practical, hand-me-down knowledge that used to be normal, the kind our grandparents just knew, then stick around, because that's exactly what we do here. We dig up the simple, proven, forgotten methods that got buried under decades of marketing, and we bring them back to life for the homes and gardens we already have. And next time, I'm going to show you the forgotten reason our grandparents planted certain flowers right in the middle of their vegetable rows on purpose. It looks like decoration. It was actually a pest control system so effective that people paid for chemicals to replace something their marigolds were already doing for free. You won't want to miss which plant they trusted most, and exactly where they placed it. Lower your boot. Save the mantis. And I'll see you in the next one. Before you go, if this video helped, there's a deeper version waiting for our members. You can ask me your own question, and a real person answers, and you'll be among thousands of folks just like you. Point your phone's camera at the code on screen. It takes less than a minute, and you can cancel anytime, no risk. Now that you know the mantis is your friend, let me show you another creature you should never harm. That spider on your porch is quietly protecting your home in ways you'd never expect. It's starting right here.